Good morning and welcome back to our news update, coming to you live from Warsaw. I'm Saria Strzemska. And we begin with the latest from Ukraine. 2 people have been killed in an overnight Russian attack on the Kyiv region. In the city of Kyiv, a medical center was hit, forcing patients and staff to evacuate. According to authorities in Kyiv, 70 people were inside the private medical facility when it was hit, killing 1 civilian. 16 patients were transferred to municipal hospitals for treatment, with 2 in serious condition. Other parts of the Kyiv region also came under attack. 1 man was killed in Fastiv, about 60 kilometers from the capital. The strike damaged 7 houses, 1 multi-story residential building, and several industrial sites. Regional authorities have reported that the air raid caused power outages in the northern Kyiv region. Donald Trump says the alleged Ukrainian strike on Putin's residence didn't happen. When asked why he believed Putin's accusations against President Zelenskyy, Trump said he had no information at first and expressed hope that Ukraine and Russia, quote, get it settled.
I don't believe that strike happened.
Right. So Putin had said in that phone call to you that that strike happened. You came out and said that, and you believed Putin. There was some criticism.
There is something that happened fairly nearby, but had nothing to do with this.
Why did you believe Putin in that moment and then go say that about Ukraine?
Because nobody knew at that moment. I mean, that was the first I heard about it.
So why not?
He said that his house was attacked. We don't believe that happened, now that we've been able to check.
Yeah.
But that was the first we ever heard about it. We just hope that Russia and Ukraine get it settled.
A $90 billion loan package for Ukraine over the next 2 years has altered Vladimir Putin's strategic calculations, according to Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski. Speaking on TV Roll's Between the Lines, Sikorski said it remains unclear whether Russia's military and economy can withstand another 2 years of war.
Much is going on. What is really important is that we have found a way to reassure Ukraine that her state functions and her defense budget will be sustained by the EU with a sum of $90 billion for the next 2 years. That, I think, is changing Putin's calculus. Because he may have hoped, as he did from the beginning, that,
fatigue would set in.
Democracies are pathetic, democracies don't have the staying power. Now he has to be ready to fight for another 2 years. And and it's not clear that his army and his economy can bear that burden.
Denmark's Prime Minister urged Donald Trump to stop the threats regarding a potential takeover of Greenland. Mette Frederiksen said that it makes absolutely no sense to suggest the United States needs to assume control over Greenland, adding that the US has no right to annex any of the 3 nations within the Danish kingdom.
It makes absolutely no sense to talk about the need for the United States to take over Greenland. The United States has no right to annex any of the 3 countries in the Commonwealth. The Kingdom of Denmark, and thus Greenland, is part of NATO and is therefore covered by the alliance's security guarantee. We already have a defense agreement between the Kingdom and the United States today, which gives the United States wide access to Greenland. I would therefore strongly urge the United States to stop the threats against a historically close ally and against another country and another people who have said very clearly that they're not for sale.
Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, Donald Trump brushed aside questions about Greenland, saying that his focus is now on Venezuela, Russia and Ukraine. Here's what he said.
Well, I don't want to talk about Greenland. Let's talk about Venezuela, Russia, Ukraine, and we'll worry about Greenland in about 2 months. Let's talk about Greenland in 20 days.
On Venezuela, we talk so much about energy.
By the way, I will say this about Greenland. We need Greenland from a national security situation. It's so strategic. Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security. And Denmark is not going to be able to do it, I can tell you.
Finnish President Alexander Stubb has shown his support for the Danish Prime Minister. Stubb said it's Denmark and Greenland who decide the fate of the Arctic territory.
No one decides for Greenland and Denmark, but Greenland and Denmark themselves. Our Nordic friends Denmark and its Prime Minister have our full support.
Fears of a potential U.S. annexation of Greenland have intensified following the U.S. military operation in Venezuela. According to Ian McNamara, a researcher at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs, Donald Trump does not place much faith in alliances, meaning the European Union and NATO must convince him that Greenland's defense needs can be met without resorting to aggression.
The problem with Donald Trump in this regard is he doesn't believe in alliances, even though these defense assets are already there for the United States through the NATO alliance with Denmark and indeed, following on from that, with Greenland. So I think there is an onus on Donald Trump to understand these things, but there's also probably an onus this year, 2026, as the year turns, for European diplomats and Danish diplomats and NATO diplomats to really persuade the US administration that we are good allies and that all defense requirements relating to Greenland will be met without any aggression that could potentially jeopardize the transatlantic alliance.
Captured Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro is facing charges alleging that he provided support to major drug trafficking operations, including the Sinaloa cartel and the Tren de Aragua gang. On Saturday, the charges originally filed in 2020 were expanded to include his wife, Celia Flores, who is accused of ordering kidnappings and murders. U.S. prosecutors say that Maduro directed cocaine trafficking routes using state resources to support operations. He denies any wrongdoing. The U.S. has considered Maduro an illegitimate dictator since he declared victory in the widely contested 2018 elections, mired in voter fraud accusations. Although Washington first painted the intervention as motivated by wanting to bring Maduro to justice, Trump has since admitted that other factors, such as access to Venezuela's oil and curbing migration to the U.S., were also at play. Commentators say the U.S. removal of Nicolás Maduro could serve as a warning to other regimes hostile to Washington, including Iran. In recent days, U.S. President Donald Trump took to social media to express solidarity with protesters in Tehran. Alberto Cole, a professor at DePaul University, recently joined TVP World to discuss the risk of escalation between the United States and Iran. Here's more.
President Trump had met with Prime Minister Netanyahu a few days ago and very clearly warned Iran that if Iran continues on its current path of rebuilding again its nuclear capabilities and its missile capabilities, that the United States will not hesitate to attack them and destroy those capabilities. So I think the Iranian leaders right now are very worried. They might have thought that Trump was bluffing when he warned them not to crush protesters. And now they see what he did to Maduro, and they may be very, very concerned because, of course, they're also very isolated. Yes, China is a close economic partner, but the Chinese are not going to stick their necks out for the Ayatollahs. And Russia is very, very busy up to its neck waging the Ukrainian war. So Russia is not going to come to the Iranians' help, no more than it did that this past June. So the Iranian leadership has to be very, very worried, and they have to be weighing right now what are the odds of Donald Trump doing to them some version of what he did to Maduro.
And in the wake of the Venezuelan attack, Donald Trump insists that American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never again be questioned. He is now invoking what he calls the Monroe Doctrine, an expansion of the 19th century Monroe Doctrine, which warned foreign powers against interfering in America's sphere of influence. So could another state be next? Paweł Trzaskowski reports.
After these events, the world has now a new buzzword.
The Monroe Doctrines.
Or rather,
They now call it the Monroe Document, I don't know.
the return of this 19th century doctrine presented by the fifth President of the United States, James Monroe, was heralded in the new U.S. national security strategy.
Where the hemispheric security, the establishment of U.S. dominance in the direct neighborhood is first and foremost goal.
And in this very neighborhood,
Venezuela was on top of this agenda.
with Maduro gone, Washington sends a clear message.
The American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen.
What will happen, though, is Washington setting its sights on asserting control in other countries in the region, with Cuba being the next likely target.
I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about, because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation.
But Western Hemisphere is not limited to the Americas. Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark in the Arctic Circle, is also on Washington's wish list.
We need it for national security. We have to have it.
That was 2 weeks ago, but this need has just been reiterated in an interview for The Atlantic. That's possibly one of the reasons why rather reserved reactions to the Venezuela operation were coming from many European countries.
The Danish government is closely monitoring the situation in Venezuela with our allies. Now is the time for de-escalation. International law must be respected.
The legal classification of the US deployment is complex. We will take our time with that. I reiterated my support for international law this morning. The UK government will discuss the evolving situation with US counterparts.
Conspicuous silence comes from Hungary, which in 2013 was the only European Union country that did not condemn Maduro's illegitimate presidency and continued to maintain ties with Venezuela. In Europe, staunch opposition to the intervention was voiced in Belarus and Slovakia, and eastwards, of course, in Russia and China, with both countries accusing the US of undermining international law. But this opposition comes from countries that are themselves permanent members of the United Nations and yet have undermined the UN Charter with the aggression on Ukraine. By crying foul, they expect the West to stick to the rules which Beijing and Moscow want immunity from. However, in Venezuela, Trump flipped the table and used the language of strength against those usually perceived as strongmen.
In terms of understanding the way these strong men think and behave and how to actually influence them, Donald Trump is right that force is the way that they respond to things.
Therefore, a spillover effect could happen now.
Anything is possible with Donald Trump as president.
But does it apply to sticking to New Year's resolutions?
Do you have a New Year's resolution?
I have.
Let's hear it.
Peace on earth.
Paweł Trzaskowski for TVP World.
Now the latest update on the tragic New Year's Eve incident at the bar in Crans-Montana ski resort in Switzerland. The last 16 victims have been identified, local police say. The youngest victims were teenagers as young as 14. The last victims to be identified include Swiss, French, Italian, Portuguese, Belgian and British nationals. The blaze, which killed 40 and left 119 people injured, erupted in the early hours of January 1st during New Year's celebrations. Many of the wounded had to be transferred to burns units in hospitals across Europe to assist Switzerland's overwhelmed clinics. According to initial investigations, the likely cause of the fire was sparklers on champagne bottles being carried too close to the ceiling. A national day of mourning will be held on Friday. And with this, we conclude our news update. Thank you for watching. World Talks with Radosław coming up next.